Well, we want to welcome all you teachers to our shortened version of the Philadelphia campaign, and we are at Valley Forge. And first, I would like to thank Jason and Jean for continuing to try to put this program together this summer. You know, our philosophy at the foundation is to continue to educate students and teachers. So we want to thank them for trying to put this program together, even though it's truncated for the summer. We are at Valley Forge and we're standing in front of Washington's headquarters. And though it is very small, it's a very typical building of that time period. And about 80% of this building is original. Not necessarily all original from this particular building, but when it was remanufactured, it was original from that time period. I believe historically that Valley Forge is very hallowed ground. Many historians debate what's the turning point of the American Revolution. Is it Saratoga? Is it Trenton? Or is it Yorktown? And I believe that it's Saratoga, Princeton, but I also believe Valley Forge is part of the turning point of the American Revolution. Several years ago, Joseph Ellis was writing a book on Washington spies, and he said when he began to study Valley Forge, he knew very little about what went on here. So he put a title in, or one of the chapters of his book, it's called The Greatest Story Yet Untold. And Ellis is in the process now of writing a book about what went on here at Valley Forge during the winter encampment. There are a lot of misconceptions about Valley Forge, a lot of myths that have transpired over the years. One of the myths is it was such a cold, harsh winter with many feet of snow that the men suffered here. Actuality, it was the third most mild winter of the century. The reason the men suffered here because they weren't being supplied any longer, so when Washington gets his army here, they have no supplies. Another myth is coming up the Schuylkill River, which is to my right on the other side of that tree line, the Schuylkill River. Another myth is that there was multitudes of shad coming up the river during the winter, which fed the men, which is just another myth. The greatest story yet untold. Washington gets here on December 19th of 1777. The Philadelphia campaign had been a major disaster. He loses Brandywine. The Battle of the Clouds is rained out. The Paoli Massacre, which Anthony Wayne lost 52 men. Washington also then loses Germantown. And then in early December, Washington begins to make his move out to the winter encampment, which is here, Valley Forge. So he gets here on December 19th. He has 11,000 men when he gets here. And he sets up and distributes the men over about a 3-mile radius on the outer line, which hopefully we'll see, and then a valley, then an inner line, and another valley, and then you come down into this valley where it's the back of the encampment, and behind the winter encampment is the Schuylkill River. This was the home of Isaac Potts and William DeWeese, and this was a forge, an iron forge and a grist mill. And the iron forge was up farther, which originally was called Mount Joy Forge, and then it became known as the Valley Forge. And if you look out, you can see you're down in the valley here. And so in September, after Brandywine, Washington has 4,000 barrels of supplies here, up in the DeWeese house, which is on the other side of that tree line up there, which we can't see because of the leaves. But he has 4,000 barrels of supplies there, of flour, tomahawks, horseshoes, digging shovels, and each barrel weighs 196 pounds. Well, General Howe sent British soldiers in here to confiscate those supplies. And General Washington sent our friend Alexander Hamilton and Light Horse Harry Lee to try to get those supplies out of here. Now there's 4,000 barrels. 2 guys and 6 soldiers are not going to get those barrels out of here. They were confiscated. And for all of you that are fans of the musical Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton almost died here. As he and Light Horse Harry Lee were escaping to get away from the British, Hamilton jumped on a boat on the Schuylkill, which was swollen because of the rains, and fell out and almost died. So Washington then, in December when he gets here, has no supplies. The Potts family, the DeWeese family, after the British came through here in September, they vacated. They left because the British destroyed the forge, they destroyed the grist mills, they destroyed many of the surrounding buildings here. So Washington's headquarters was being rented to a woman named Deborah Hughes, and when Washington came here, she rented this home to Washington with fully furnished. So this is what becomes Washington's headquarters. It is very small. There are 15 to 25 different officers that are in this home. The only 2 people that had their own bedroom was General Washington and Martha. And if you can see the bottom, it's probably hard to see in the shade. The Valley Creek is behind us, and even though today it's a shallow, not very wide creek, when it is swollen, it can be very dangerous, and many times it overflows and comes all the way up to the 3 feet on the bottom of this home. So this is the back of the winter encampment, and this is the headquarters, and this is the control center for everything that went on during the winter encampment. Washington has 700 soldiers out here in tents and cabins all during the winter. Everything went out of here all winter long. The road that we are currently standing on was the original road that came down Route 23 along the Valley Creek. It came right in front of the headquarters where we're standing, and then went around to the back of the headquarters. The kitchen on my right, your left, is put on because in the summer you do not want to cook in the heat. So the kitchens are always added onto the outside of the home, and Washington staff was fed from this kitchen by Isaac and Hannah Till. Martha Washington gets here sometime around the 5th or 6th of February. Dr. Lone's going to be talking to you a lot about Martha Washington. Martha Washington came to every winter encampment for all 8 years. It took her 10 days to travel to get here. She came to every winter encampment, so for the 8 years of the Revolution, Martha Washington is either at a winter encampment, traveling to or traveling home 5 years of all 8 years. So when Martha gets here, she takes over the running of the headquarters and the schedule for the eating. On Washington's birthday, February 22nd, Martha has a celebration for the general. She bakes him her most famous cake, the one that he liked, and even to this day, every Washington's birthday, the Park Service bakes the exact same cake and distributes it from the original recipe that Martha Washington had for the general's birthday. Ironically, General Washington did not like public displays of affection, so when Martha wanted happy birthday to be played and sung in public, the general asked her, please don't do it because it would embarrass him. So Washington has this whole demeanor in his character. The house itself, there's original furnishings inside, the railing going upstairs, a lot of the steps going upstairs, are all original to the house, and it's been rebuilt during the 1890s and into the turn of the century. The day after Washington's birthday, on February 23rd, coming down this road is another one of the heroes, General Baron von Steuben. Dr. Lohn's going to be talking to you about possibly his name was really Die Steuben, not von Steuben. We call him both, but General von Steuben was a larger than life character. Today he would probably be a professional wrestler. When he comes to America, he shows up with this large entourage of staff of Boston, and he bought them all new uniforms. The problem was the uniforms looked very similar to British uniforms, so when he gets off the ship, all of his men and the Baron is arrested because the Bostonians think he is a British soldier. But when he finally gets here, he comes in here on a huge sleigh pulled by 24 horses. Every horse had bells on them, and he had this whole entourage with him. So when the Baron shows up, he is larger than life. He's a very large man. They said that the pistols that he personally wore on his uniform were very, very large. They almost look like small shotguns. So the Baron has a whole different personality, but he gets here on February 23rd, and many historians say that he got here on the 23rd because he didn't want the general's birthday to overshadow him the day before. And then even months later, also General Benedict Arnold also comes down this road and meets with the general in these headquarters. So this is the control and command center for the whole winter encampment. Now, what got Washington to Valley Forge? There is high ground, and we'll see that on the outer line. There is a great defensive position because you have the Schuylkill River behind you. This land has been cleared, and there's a lot of trees so the men can build huts. Also, it's very close to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is 18 miles away as the crow flies, and you can get the men here, and you can set up here. And a lot of people say, well, you never want to put your back on a river because you are now boxed in. General Washington had a bridge built across the Schuylkill River up here, which is not very deep and it's not very wide up here. But he had General Selvin build a bridge across the Schuylkill River over to the Paulings Farm, and that is the only time in American history that an American standing army built a permanent bridge in all of our history. And General Selvin built that bridge, and unfortunately, when they left the winter encampment, the farmers came back and destroyed the bridge. So this is why Washington's here. He comes in with 11,000 soldiers, and they are scattered all over. He sets up the camp. General Duportail, the engineering general, spreads out the troops. They begin to build the huts. During the winter, because of lack of food, disease, Washington loses about 2,300 men. They die mostly from disease or malnutrition. Only about 30 died here because Washington got them out of the winter encampment out to the local churches, which became hospitals. Major generals all are here during the winter encampment. And so this whole winter encampment is a testament to the leadership of Washington, to the stability of Washington, to the consistency of his vision of continuing to fight the revolution. And then during the winter, Washington later writes that this was almost a miracle, because what happened here during the winter encampment, this army is turned around. It becomes a very large army. It becomes a standing, uniformed army, a well-supplied army. And when they come out of here 6 months later, this army now is almost 21,000 men who are fully supplied and fully trained and ready to take on the British. So Washington always said, because he was more in his religious ideas, he said this was almost a miracle here. Years ago, when our sons were in elementary school and we live and grow up in this area, I asked one of their teachers, why don't you go to Valley Forge for a field trip? And the teacher said to me, well, it was a winter encampment and nothing happened there. And most people think that when they come here, nothing happened here. Well, absolutely the opposite. There are thousands of stories, multiple stories here, that when Washington comes out of here in 6 months, this army survived, this army becomes stronger, this army is now stable, and the British really want nothing to do with Washington's army after Monmouth County, because this army does not fight again after Monmouth County Courthouse, which is July of 1778, until Yorktown.